The first duty of government is to protect our rights.
It's our job to maintain the proper role of government in what we were tasked to do.
Obviously, we over budgeted last year. I hate to say that I was right, but I was right. So.
And I think that that's what we need to look at more, is trying to get back to what we used to be, where our churches and our families took care of each other instead of relying on the state.
And we have no way to maintain control over the spending of this program, and it will be a disaster for this state long term.
But we have a whole gamut of kids whose parents would like to do something for them and they cannot.
I take our constitutional rights, the constitutional rights of my constituents, very seriously.
This is simply about putting it out of reach of young, innocent, vulnerable children and making our libraries and schools a safe place for them to go.
And I am increasingly frustrated that we cannot stop ourselves from drinking at the public trough.
He's sounding the alarm. He's saying if we don't address these issues, we potentially might have greater problems moving forward.
Mr. Speaker, no matter how you look at it, no matter how you boil this down, there is never any time that a parent's right to govern what their children see and what they're exposed to should ever be bypassed.
If I was looking at a business and I was looking at these figures, there would be heads rolling because this is unsustainable.
We're supposed to be bottom-up government. We're supposed to be representing my citizens' ideas and your citizens' ideas, and we're supposed to be discussing them and debating them to come to a conclusion.
We need to start making Idaho first. We need to start making America first.
We need to be protecting our First Amendment rights, not inventing ways to slowly chip away at them.
The First Amendment and our freedom of religion, freedom of speech are our first liberties. They are so important. We don't have the rest without them.
Regardless, whatever it is, we go and we run for the office that is associated with the party affiliation, and we mark a box. That's what we do. So what I am saying in this bill is that when we're out campaigning, that we tell our constituents what party we're running under. It does say in there what it does not have to be on, such as tiny little buttons or bumper stickers, because there's only so much real estate on those. But such as large signs, mailers, etc. All it is, we're being honest. We're telling everybody what party we're running under so that everybody knows. It's just transparency and shows that we are just telling our constituents, and that's it. And with that, I'd ask for your green light.
Thank you, lady. You've heard the motion. Further debate on the motion. Hearing none. Hearing the gentleman 16.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. To debate against the bill.
Gentleman has the floor.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Friends, there's a number of issues with this bill, and I appreciate the good lady's intent. Number one is that it incorrectly identifies a candidate that's running unaffiliated. They're not independent. They're not no party affiliation. They just don't want to affiliate with a party. I've got a whole lot of folks like that in my district. So forcing these people to declare that they're an independent as part of their political materials is wrong. Number two, this is a forced speech violation of the First Amendment. You can't tell me what to put on my signs. What's next? Am I going to have to display I'm a veteran, I'm an Episcopalian, maybe I'm left-handed? I mean, what's the limit here in terms of what we're going to put on our signs? Number three is, and when you look at cost on page 2, line 37, anyone with a little bit of accounting experience is going to know that cost is a pretty squishy definition. So we're going to see a lot more campaign materials that have no cost, which will allow people to get around this. Number four, this doesn't solve the real problem that we're all facing. It's a bipartisan problem of outside groups sending campaign materials opposing us. So There's no obligation here of those outside organizations to disclose who they're supporting, what that political affiliation is. That's really the root issue in Idaho politics right now. And finally, for those of us who really don't like raising money to fund our campaigns, this is a boon for campaign printers, because we're going to have to redo all of our signs, all of our campaign materials, and I've got a big stack of signs in my garage that I would love to use again in 2026 without having to reprint them. So for those reasons, friends, I request your no vote.
For the debate on the motion, good lady from 32.
Just for a question for the good lady from...
The good lady from 15 yield to a question from the good lady from 32.
Yes,
Lady yields.
So I'm just wondering if an R is sufficient, or we have to write out the whole entire Republican or Democrat on all of our signs, because I couldn't see that that would be acceptable to just put an R or an elephant or a donkey and a D.
Thank you, good lady from 15.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Speaker, and good lady from 32. It does state that it has to have a name of candidate and party affiliation, and that means you have to write out Republican, Democrat, Constitutionalist, Libertarian, etc. You have to have the party name, and that is so that we don't infringe on such as like Elephant, which might be owned by the party, etc., but Republican is not owned by them. So yes, you have to write that out.
For the debate on the motion. Hearing none, lady from 18.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. To debate against the bill?
Lady has the floor.
Thank you. I have a number of concerns with this bill. First of all, I have knocked tens of thousands of doors. I have never met a person who is looking for more partisanship in our elections. Quite the opposite. Most people I talk to are like, why is everybody so fixated on party? Can we just talk about solutions and how we fix our problems? And I don't know that we need to go further down this path of saying like everybody must fit neatly into this folder and they must bear their scarlet letter.
Wow.
Because at the end of the day, I don't know what this tells you that will be particularly useful to Idaho voters. Not everybody has signed the pledge to the party platform. Simply having the name of the party there doesn't actually tell you what their position is on the issues that might matter to you most. And to the good gentleman from 16's point, there might be other pieces of information that would be more useful to people. Maybe voters want to know.
Hey folks,
do you have kids?
welcome. Idaho Signal's on the air. Sounds like Ilana Rebel. It's interesting how Democrats in Idaho don't want to be labeled Democrats. They love showing it off in other parts of the country, but when you're here in Idaho, it's like a scarlet letter of some sorts. You've listening to the debate right now. We'll dip in and listen to a little bit more as this is a fascinating conversation here.
To a likely successful court challenge. The First Amendment actually protects you from compelled speech. You cannot be forced by your government into disclosure. And so they can't make you say, are you married? Are you this? Are you that? And I don't think they should be able to make you say what your party is. There's a very narrow carve out for that under electioneering law. This has been established by the Supreme Court and various lower federal courts that say they can make you within the electioneering period, which is like 30 days before the election, they can make you disclose who paid for your mailer. So that's why we all have that little paid for by. That falls into that very narrow exception that courts have sanctioned to forced speech. But I think this is going way beyond that. First of all, it's not confined to the electioneering period. I don't think it's confined to something that has been deemed that specifically necessary for voters to know. They'll see it when they get in the voting booth. So I think if somebody were to challenge this, it would go down in court because I don't think it complies with the narrow First Amendment carve out against forced speech. So for these reasons, I hope you'll give this your red light. I think this sends us into the pit of more partisanship that we really don't need, and I don't think it gives voters any useful information.
Further debate on the motion. Gentleman from
wow,
11.
the cameras are a little wonky today.
Mr. Speaker. Gentleman has the floor.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Good ladies and gentlemen of the body. I very much take the approach that
this
the
is
good
Representative
lady
Lucas
from 18
Kaler,
and is
Republican out of Caldwell. Let's listen in.
the good gentleman from 16. They cited First Amendment violation, and without our First Amendment, we are speechless. We are without defense. Our voice is not heard. And to the point of the other argument that was brought up, how many thousands of dollars have we spent on literature, on cards, on campaign signs? And many of us who have run multiple campaigns, we try to save as much as we can to be responsible with resources and to conserve what we have. And how many, let's just throw out some big numbers there, how many tens of thousands of dollars worth of material is going to end up going in the landfill because of a law like this? I think it's unnecessary, and I simply cannot understand why somebody would want to force that kind of speech, why that needs to be compelled. If somebody wants to know what party affiliation I am, please ask. I typically, when I'm knocking on doors, and I've knocked on thousands of doors in my district over the last couple of years, not just for myself, but other candidates that are running in my district, I always identify what party I'm affiliated with, just to skip that step of possible ambiguity on the person that I'm talking to. So I will be a no vote on this.
Further debate on the motion? Gentleman before.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Would the good lady from 15 rise for a question?
Lady yields a question.
Yes, I'll yield.
Lady yields.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I'm wondering if the good lady has clarified with the Secretary of State's office whether pre-existing campaign material does in fact have to be reprinted. And I ask because it has always been the policy that if there was a change, for example, in your treasurer, you did not have to reprint the material.
Lady 15.
Thank you, good gentleman. I apologize, I can't see your number, but
4.
thank you. Good gentleman from 4. That was not directly called out. I have communicated with or corresponded with the Secretary of State. With this, I believe it would, because I don't believe we have any way of knowing what would be from prior to new. I don't believe there's any way of knowing what would be from years past to current.
Thank you.
Further debate on the motion? Hearing none, would the good lady, good gentleman from 13.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. To debate in favor of the bill.
Gentleman has the floor.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker, and members of the body. It's been a fascinating debate. You know, we cannot compel or require somebody to put something on their campaign sign. Yeah, we can. Paid for by is required on your campaign sign. I find it interesting, the good gentleman from District 11, his argument against this as a restriction on free speech is in a solidly red district. His opinion might be a little bit different if he lived in a purple district. What's happening in purple districts right now across the state of Idaho is people are walking up to the door and identifying with whichever party they want to identify with, or acting like they are, hey, I'm a Republican or I'm a Democrat. What's wrong with truth in advertising? What's wrong with being proud that you associate with the Republican Party or you associate with the Democrat Party? There's nothing wrong with that. There's no shame in that. Stand up and be accounted for. Let the people of Idaho know exactly who you are and what you stand for. Our good minority leader talked about issues like abortion and gay rights. You know, we could do a voter's guide and we could put that information out there, I guess. You know, we are talking with those that are drafting that type of legislation. And if those are questions that this body decides they would like voters to know, where you stand on taxes and abortion and gay rights, we can do all that. But this simply helps people that are moving here from from other states to the state of Idaho to understand you are a Republican and you identify with the Republican Party, or you're a Democrat and you identify with the Democrat Party. So, Mr. Speaker, don't believe all the red herrings. Don't believe all the ghosts that are out there. Let's give this your green light.
For debate on the motion, good lady from 6.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. My first thought when I read this, I was like, okay, I think this is a good idea, and I already do this because I found a cute little elephant that I liked, and it's on my everything that I put out because I'm proud to say I'm a Republican. However, now if we have to actually write out the words Republican and we can't have a symbol, I mean, that's going to cost all of us a lot of money to change our hundreds of signs that we have. So I wish that we could change that. I wish that the good lady could take that part out and symbol that has been recognized by the party for hundreds of years.
Okay. You know what, folks? Rather than suffer through Idaho Public Television's Rough day today. We'll just keep an eye on this vote. And it's fascinating whenever, I mean, this is campaigning. This is what they do. Remember, folks, politicians, they care about three things: getting elected, getting reelected, and getting elected to higher office. And so all of this, what's going on right now, affects them all greatly. So at first you thought, oh, maybe only one or two people would stand up on this issue, but now we're hearing it all over. So we will keep tabs on this vote here. This is just a House bill. It'll head over to the Senate if it passes here and go through another round of debate. Welcome, everybody. It's good to see you. I hope you all had a great weekend. I sure did. I flew in late last night. I was out in Philadelphia for an event, and it was very fascinating because, and it fits well with some of the things that we want to cover today. It's interesting having been in a large city over the weekend, like one of the largest cities. I mean, Philadelphia, it's the birthplace of the Constitution, birthplace of our independence. And Independence Hall, I got a chance to go visit Independence Hall, and it's an amazing feeling being inside the room where they debated the Constitution, where they debated over the Declaration of Independence and so forth, and it was really was wonderful to be there. That being said, it's in a giant city, and our cities are in horrible shape. I mean, absolute horrible shape. You couldn't. It's sad. People say like, "Oh, our country has fallen. It's turning into third world." Folks, I think it's already there. I mean, I was walking around, and I was just astounded at the absolute just decay that was around the city, and the just kind of this like no sense of pride in our country. I mean, this was the founding of our country, and the people that live there, that walk around there, that work there, it felt so sad. It was just everybody just seemed sad and just not happy. I mean, it just was like, it was very sad. And I don't know. It affected me. It affected me. And I think that's because our society we've lost what it means to be an American. We have lost the values. That's why we're so passionate here on this program at Citizens Alliance about the values. I mean, that's what our pledge is about. Our pledge is about values. And if you want to fix this country, we need to focus on our values. We need to champion folks that have fantastic, good values in order to save. And I met a lot of great folks that did have those values while I was there, but it truly was just sad. It was just sad to walk around and see that, and also everything was just corporate stores all over the place. It was like really bizarre. And I live up here in North Idaho in Kootenai County, and it's all about small businesses, and it's all about that. So and sure, we have big corporate stores peppered throughout the city, and Spokane is just over there. But folks, it was really hard. It was hard. And that segues into a couple of clips that we want to show you from this morning. But let's put up this graphic again. This is the state of our country when it comes to marijuana. And we went ahead and added our little tagline here. Idaho is what America was, because right now Idaho is the only state in the union that still has marijuana as completely illegal. Okay. And you may agree or disagree to some extent on that, but that's the case. That's where we are right now. And, again, when I was walking around Philadelphia, there were people just openly smoking it in the streets. You'd be like, I live up here. I smell skunks every now and again, and I was just like, is that a skunk? I'm like, no, that's not a skunk. That's weed out there, right? And they're just smoking it out in the streets everywhere. And so we've seen what is happening, and you look at Idaho and the West, those Western states where it's just completely legal. and that you can say to yourself, are there laws that we should be passing? But there really isn't, because it really just comes down to our values. It comes down to who we want to be, and where can we pass along those values to our children, to our communities. And so it really is up to us, folks. It really is up to us. And here in Idaho, we have a citizen legislature and we're building something here to create folks that have great values, to come in and pass certain bills and laws and things like that. Okay. So that brings us to House Joint Resolution number 4, which is a resolution that would put on the ballot for you and I to vote that the legislature would be the only body in the state of Idaho to do any sort of laws, repealing laws or whatever when it comes to marijuana. So this morning in the Senate State Affairs Committee, Senator Lakey and Senator Groh were co-sponsoring this bill that had already passed the House, and it was over in the Senate. So let's listen to a little bit of Senator Lakey present this bill on marijuana.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Senators, Todd Lakey, State Senator from District 23. I'll be brief but emphasize just a few points. Senators, it's been my pleasure, even this year, to argue that in Idaho we are different. We're different, and that is why so many people want to come and live and raise a family in Idaho. We've planted the flag that we're different. We resist the moral and societal decline that we've seen that has plagued our neighboring states. And I think that's in part because of the constitutional provisions that Senator Groh mentioned. Our Constitution calls for us to resist that type of moral decline and promote temperance and morality and virtue and sobriety and the purity of the home. We've watched the negative effects of legalization of drugs and the softer stance on drugs that have increased homelessness, decline in mental health, and increase in property and violent crime in our neighboring states. And Mr. Chairman, I'll echo, it's not our intent to impact the FDA-approved and prescribed drugs. Even fentanyl has medical benefits, and it's controlled. And with that control and proper testing, it's prescribed by a medical doctor in extremely small amounts because it's so lethal. But that's the appropriate way to handle that issue. In a prescribable pill or liquid form, you take those properties from marijuana, if there are redeeming properties, and do that, put it in a prescribable pill or liquid form. Senators, marijuana is a gateway to other drugs, but it also has serious consequences of its own. The modern levels, as was described, are extremely high as far as THC, and it's linked to problems regarding cognitive function, from learning, memory, attention, processing speed, perceptual and motor function, and language. The evidence also links it to earlier onset psychosis and worsens those symptoms for those that already have that condition. It's also connected to schizophrenia, it's especially strong in our young men. And research has showed that it increases risk of depression. Legalization increases the number of users. And cannabis products are often sold and packaged in packaging that mimics food products that are appealing to our youth. Adolescents are exposed to cannabis marketing, and when they're exposed to that, they increase their chance of use. Senators, as a former juvenile prosecutor, I've seen that marijuana introduces our youth to the drug culture. I was involved in a sting operation where undercover officers went into high school, and they were part of a marijuana selling operation. And it was, I guess, sad to see how some of the youth embraced that as being cool, to be a drug dealer. And that was all part of the marijuana culture that introduced them into doing that. It increases that corresponding criminal activity. This resolution helps protect against the pro-marijuana industry that will bring in large amounts of money, hire paid signature gatherers, and engage in a pervasive pro-legalization advertising campaign to influence voters in Idaho. Those in the industry acknowledge that Idaho is a relatively cheap state to buy success in an initiative process. But we're a republic. We represent the people, the voice of the people in our districts. And the Constitution provides that the legislature has authority and control over what Senator Ruckty mentioned, alcohol. I would argue that our constitutional provision rests that authority with the legislature and not in the initiative process.
Okay, great. So, Senator Lakey there making an argument and using some of the old, scientific arguments against marijuana usage and so forth. And again, folks, just to reiterate, again, there are many reasons in the medical aspect of this of marijuana where it helps people, right? And so we need to figure out what that balance is. But as of right now, when you look at the states and you look at the surrounding states in Idaho, and a lot of folks have come from those states here, and there's plenty of back and forth for those that live near the border and commute and all this. I mean, you down in District 9, which borders down in Fruitland, and Payette County, Washington County, parts of Canyon County that border along Oregon there. The crime and everything just across the border in Ontario is it keeps Idahoans from going over there, and so it's a big deal. It's a big deal. So anyway, so that was some of the argument in favor of that bill. There was some pushback, of course, from Senator Ruckty, which was mentioned here, trying to make the equivalence here with alcohol. Let's listen to a little bit of that.
3 of the Constitution, Section 26. That's where we're going to the recommendation or the proposal is to put this provision about marijuana. And my understanding is it would say that the people couldn't use the initiative process to speak on or address any marijuana issues. That's subparagraph 2. Subparagraph 1 uses very similar language related to alcohol. Very similar language. So if we're saying that the initiative process can't be used by the people to address marijuana issues, are we saying by implication that we interpret the languages of subparagraph 1 regarding alcohol to mean that the people could not, by initiative or even referendum, speak to the use of alcohol?
Senator Lakey.
Mr. Chairman and Senator Ruckty, we'll caveat, again, that's not what we have before us. We have Section 2 before us today. And attorneys can differ, but I read subsection 1 to say that the legislature has full power and authority to permit, control, and regulate or prohibit the manufacture, sale of alcohol, and that this comes in that same vein. The legislature has the sole purview over alcohol, and this essentially does the same thing. I would say it adds an additional word to make it stronger in the sense that it says only the legislature, but I read those two the same.
Okay, thank you.
Senator Adams.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Senator Lakey, in your testimony, you referred to studies that showed different results on, I believe it was marijuana. And my question is, so marijuana is a Schedule I drug, which makes testing and research for it challenging. Where is that data from? And is that age specific, or what are the parameters around those studies?
Senator Lakey.
Mr. Chairman, Senator Adams, most of my references come from the National Institute of Drug Abuse, and the studies vary. Some were focused particularly on youth, and the impacts, as I mentioned, on the future impacts on youth that use marijuana, and particularly the young men.
Okay, very good. Fred Birnbaum, Vice President, I believe, over at Idaho Freedom Foundation, which the Idaho Freedom Foundation normally are opposed to, enhancing drug laws and so forth. But they did have a unique perspective on this bill from their standpoint, which I thought was fascinating. So let's listen to a little bit of Fred Birnbaum.
About 3 things briefly: the why, the what, and the how. I believe Senators Lakey and Groh have spoken to the why quite extensively. So I would just say that rarely in public policy do we get a chance to be proactive. And learn from the experience of others. Often we learn from our own mistakes. And we've seen initiatives, and the drug culture in other states has actually diminished the quality of life. And so again, I won't spend too much time on the why. I do want to talk a bit about the what, because I think there have been some questions comparing this section to the existing section. And whether or not you believe that intoxicating liquors is completely descriptive, I think you would agree it doesn't say beer, wine, tequila. It's a high-level description. And notionally, that's why in this proposed constitutional amendment, it uses the words marijuana, narcotics, and other psychoactives, meaning that it provides enough guidance, because what this is a constitutional amendment that's going before the voters. So if you said something like Schedule 1, that's variable. 2, would a voter know what that really is? So this informs the voter, okay, this is what is being restricted to the legislature. The how, and I think this is where perhaps some people got hung up. Yes, the language is slightly different because it's more specific. At the time of, back in the early 1930s, we had just come out of Prohibition. And there really wasn't it was a concern to give the states the power. But here's what's important to understand. The states have the power. Marijuana is illegal right now. We know that. What this is saying is that the initiative cannot make it legal. And only the legislature can do that. And the reason is, very frankly, so that we don't have initiatives, because initiatives are driven by big checks, marketing, and messaging. So I see my time's expired. That went quickly. Thank you, and I'll stand for any questions.
Very good. Very good. Yeah. So there you go. There you have it. Great words there from Fred. Okay, folks, let's take a short break. We will come back. Before we go, though, there were a couple votes that we were watching in the House that happened. The whole one on. We'll do this one first. This was Senate Bill 1038. It passed the Senate about a week ago or so, and this would stop Idaho from having to recognize anything that the World Health Organization, aka WHO, we're just not recognizing them here in Idaho. And so that passed the House and will head its way to the governor's desk. The other bill was that we were watching was House Bill. Well, we didn't really watch this one, but this passed too. This was on regarding the accuracy of voter registration information. So that's always good when we can see that. But the other bill that we were listening to the entire time was House Bill 359 about having to add your party affiliation on your signs and your material. That bill apparently was sent to general orders. So there were, I guess, enough people that had concerns about it that they still liked the idea. They just wanted to refine it and make sure that it covered all the bases. So I guess that bill is still alive. We'll pay attention to that. We're going to take a short break. We'll be right back.
And that's exactly what happened. You want to pull the tape? You can pull the tape because we now got video.
The dictionary defines a pledge as something that you give as a sign that you'll keep a promise. As Idahoans, that's what we're looking for in our elected leaders. A sign that they'll keep their word. Talk is cheap, and so are political promises, hidden agendas, and special interests. This is why we created the Citizens Alliance of Idaho Pledge, affirming the values Idahoans have been living by for over 100 years. Inspired by the only two documents everyone has agreed to live by. So when an Idaho legislator signs our pledge, inviting voters to publicly hold them accountable, that's what we call political integrity. The pledge restores trust and honesty between voters and their legislators. It means protecting our shared values and ensuring your voice is heard in Boise. And that is priceless. Thank your legislator for having the political courage to sign the Citizens Alliance of Idaho Pledge. And if they haven't, it's time to ask why.
All right, folks. IdahoSignal.live if you are driving around and want to listen in the car, just tune your phone over to idahosignal.live. You can listen to us live right now. It's pretty awesome. And then the show, it goes on a loop for the next 24 hours until we're live again. So that's idahosignal.live 24/7. You can hear the program and what's going on if you miss any portion of it, or you just want to save on your data, because you can't really watch like having the app on, you know, like the Rumble app, the YouTube app, and just listening to it. I mean, maybe there's, I don't know. Whenever I do that, I just chew up the data, so I don't like that. I like that functionality. More places should have that. More shows should offer that live interaction. Very good. All right, folks, welcome back. The House and the Senate both have adjourned. They will return later today to go through some more bills. Last week they did that. The House flew through tons of bills last week, and I want to get into two of them because there were some interesting exchanges here. And you know, one of the things that folks do when they want to vote against a bill that like protects children or stops like the woke nonsense is they try to find something in it that they can like that they can find one little tiny little technicality, and they can go, that's the thing I can choose to say, this is why I'm against the bill, rather than just come out and saying, no, I think we need to be teaching all of this woke gender ideology stuff in school. I think we should, and this bill would stop us from doing that. And I mean, when are we going to see that argument? Like, why don't you just be honest, right? When are we going to see that? We're not going to see it. What we do see instead is stuff like this. So last week, while I was away, Representative Dale Hawkins presented House Bill 351. Now, this one is all about uploading a list of materials, all the curriculum, all the things that a teacher would have to use in the classroom to teach your children, to teach our children. This is the, if we're teaching math, here's the stuff we're using. I'm going to use, right? And it's going to be online and accessible for parents to look at and say, okay, here's what's going on, right? Well, Representative Britt Raybould stood up and had a question about some of the material or some of the wording and the language in this, and this was a fascinating exchange. And I think this is one of those little technical details that you have to that you had to like really pin yourself in order to say, oh, now this is why I don't want the bill. I don't want this to go forward. So that's my speculation. That's my my alleging, because it always seems to be the same people over and over again fighting this stuff. Let's watch some of this.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker, and good gentlemen. On page 1, line 32, no, sorry, I'm trying to follow here. Line 30, you make reference to any required textbooks. Is your intent with that language selection that the district needs to post a textbook in its entirety?
Don't do.
Mr. Speaker, good lady from 34, no, ma'am. It's clear that we just want to know what the material is. They don't have to print every page and put it online.
Lady 34.
Mr. Speaker, just for a follow-up, if the gentleman will yield.
Gentleman yield. Additional question.
Cautiously, the gentleman yields.
I hear the voice of fear, good lady from 34, but he's all the way in. Let's hear your question.
Mr. Speaker and good gentlemen, truly this for me is a technical question, because I note that later in the text you make reference to including the titles of the textbooks themselves, which makes sense to me, but the location and the verbiage that stipulates that they have to, and any required textbooks, even at a broad interpretation, would suggest to me you're talking about the full textbook. Did you have any conversations with anyone as to whether or not this would be a interpretation that some of the districts might feel under obligation to do based on the wording?
Down from 2.
Mr. Speaker, good lady from 34. Actually, I thought we'd addressed it in the language. We made the changes to ensure the districts only be required to put a list of the textbooks up. In no way are we implying that they have to put every page of a book up.
Lady 34.
Mr. Speaker, to gently debate the bill.
Good lady has the floor to debate the motion.
I'm just doing an actual literal reading of the text in the bill, and it says quite clearly, including the source for any supplemental education materials, any required textbooks, and any course syllabi. If I'm a district and I'm being advised by my attorney about what that language means, I think I have a really hard time saying that I can defend not placing the full textbook online based on the language in the bill. And I will grant the good gentleman that later he makes reference to including the titles of required textbooks. And if he had left out that any required textbooks, then that would have covered the basis to what he is describing. But in this instance, we're putting our school districts in the position of potentially having to figure out, one, if they can legally put up a copyrighted textbook on a website, and whether or not they'll be in compliance with the law if they fail to do so, if copyright prevents them, and they have to deal with any associated charges for making that information available on the website. So, while I appreciate the gentleman's good intent, I'm viewing this as a legal challenge for our districts and don't believe I can be supportive of it. Thank you.
Thank you, ladies. Further debate on the motion. Lady from 4.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker, to gently debate the bill.
Lady can gently, there's a lot of gently stuff going on today. Lady can gently debate the bill.
So, I guess asking permission to read the bill. Do I have to ask permission to
You
read
do
the
not
bill?
have to ask
Okay.
permission to read from the bill,
All
good
right,
lady.
so on line 29, precluding the line we were just talking about, including the source of any supplemental education, so that's requiring the source of those things. I don't think it's requiring the textbook.
For the debate on the motion.
Okay, let me just I want to show you the bill here. Let's bring up the bill. I don't know if you guys will be able to see it, but I just kind of want to show you. There's a bunch of underlying marks right there, and this is what Representative Raybould was talking about. She's looking at this line here where it says a process, any required textbooks and any course syllabi must be uploaded. So she was saying any required textbooks, meaning we have to upload the entire textbook, the entire page, right? Like every portion in there. But what Representative Price just pointed out is that she took that entirely out of context, because that portion, you have to go back and you have to start at the beginning there, where B starts, section B. And it says a process by which parents may learn about the course of study for their children and review learning materials, including the source of any supplemental education materials, any required textbooks, and any course syllabi. So Elaine was exactly right. They're talking about the source of any required textbook. Okay? So there it is in black and white. All right. This is the problem, and I want to bring Brian Allman up for this. Brian, good to see you, my friend. How was your weekend?
It was good.
All right, good.
Yeah.
Well, I don't want to hear about it. I'll take your word for it. But Brian, this is precisely this is one of the big things that I really hate seeing, because you know that there's a bigger reason why a lot of these folks oppose these bills. But they look for these technicalities in order to hang their hat on it. But she's absolutely wrong here. Absolutely wrong. And it makes me wonder, like, when you point out to somebody that they're wrong, or that, or you could even say it like, good news, you've misinterpreted this. It only means the source for any required textbook. So you're perfectly fine. And then they double down and they say, I don't know, I'm just really, really concerned with the legal challenges that this might present to our school districts, meaning that they would rather protect school districts than protect children.
Yeah. So now there are sometimes unintended consequences that you got to watch out for. A bill went through a Senate committee last week that's exactly that, where, everybody agrees on what it's going to do, but okay, let's parse the words and figure out how it's actually going to be applied once it's in our law. But then, as you said, there's also people who will get very pedantic about things because they don't like the bill for another reason, and they're going to look for an excuse, something to justify why they're going to vote against that. And this seems to be that case. It's teachers' unions and schools have long resisted transparency in what they're teaching. I don't have them offhand, but I remember a few cases over the years where they won't tell parents what the books they're using in school are, or they won't tell them, won't give them that information. They need to do public records requests to even figure out what the curricula is and the syllabi, and then they'll charge them thousands of dollars for those public records requests. So this seems reasonable to me. The way I read it, it's just, a list of these textbooks are going to be used in these classes. And if you as a parent are concerned, you can always go out and look for more information once you have that list.
Yeah, absolutely. And I remember when anytime the school is considering a new series of books for like for history class, or like, oh, we're going to update our history books, and we have these books and we have these books, and so we're deciding which vendor to go with, which publisher to go with, and then those books, the actual books, would be even available in the library for 60 days for people to go in and look at it. So this isn't beyond, this isn't beyond beyond reasonable to just have a list and make it available online so that it's easier, so you don't have to go down there. You can do all this research yourself just by looking online. I think this is a very reasonable bill. But again, Brian, I understand, sometimes there are technicalities within a bill. We perhaps saw it earlier today with the campaign bill about having to identify your party affiliation on your campaign materials, that it may need to send it there so you can change and adjust some wording. But this wasn't the only bill that day last week that this happened to. In fact, in the next bill, House Bill 352, well, surprise, surprise, Representative Lori McCann had a problem with trying to stop teachers from teaching this or bringing up, this gender identity, wokeism stuff that happens in class. Here's an exchange between Lori McCann and Dale Hawkins on House Bill 352.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I would have a question for the gentleman from 2 about this.
Gentleman from 2 yield to a question from the lady from 6.
Gentleman yields.
Gentleman yields.
Thank you, Speaker, and good gentleman. So I would want to know where in our school, the content, where is it that it says we will talk about gender identity?
Good jump, 2.
Mr. Speaker, good lady from 6. Actually, it says that we can't.
Mm-hmm. That's my point. Mr. Speaker, I would like to follow up.
Good lady from 6, care to one follow-up question.
Thank you.
The gentleman from 2, the 86, would like you to yield to additional question. Do you yield?
Gentleman yields.
Gentleman yields.
Thank you. So following up on that, if it is already in there that we cannot, then why are we bringing this when if it's not in our content already that we speak about this? I don't understand why this then needs to be outlined in this bill.
Jump for 2.
Mr. Speaker, good lady, I guess there's a communication confusion here. I thought she was asking me what the content of the bill I bring does. Currently in our schools, we know that this is going on. This will stop it.
Thank you, good gentleman. Good lady from 6.
I'm going to debate then against this bill, Mr. Speaker.
Lady has the floor to debate against the motion.
Thank you. So my problem with this is that if we're in high school, I get that younger grades, the teachers probably don't even address this, but I'm thinking about my own teaching experiences, and you're in the middle of a discussion in something that could be from history, could be from in English, in a reading that they're reading. And if something comes up, is the teacher supposed to say, I'm sorry, underlie, we cannot even have that discussion in the class? Is that what we're doing in this bill? High schoolers.
Yes, I paused it there. Brian, let's pause it right there. Yes, right? Like if something pops up that's inappropriate to discuss in school, the teacher can say, stop, we're not talking about this. If you'd like to discuss it further, you're more than welcome to take it home. Let's get back to English or literature or math. Am I wrong, Brian?
No, of course not. And that's really is the problem, is that, we've heard, stories, multiple stories throughout our state and throughout the country of not only, gender identity and sexual orientation being talked about in, high school classes, but also in lower grades and also in subjects it has nothing to do with. I remember some examples of some Common Core math textbook that had some sort of sexual orientation component to story problems. It's like there is a concerted effort to put this in every subject to, just diffuse it into the entire school system. And this seems like a very reasonable clause to just say, we're not going to do that.
Absolutely.
I'm not sure why Representative McCann is debating against that so vociferously.
Because of the values, right? Because of the values. She doesn't have the right values. That's what we're talking about, folks. This is the whole thing. It doesn't really matter if you're a Republican or a Democrat in Idaho, right? It's about values. They want to put on their signs whether or not they're Republican or Democrat. Who cares? During the debate, McCann stood up and said, "I'm proud to be a Republican." Yet she's up there talking like this. She's talking like this. The sign should say whether or not you've signed the Citizens Alliance of Idaho pledge. That's what it should say. You want to know someone's values. This is the whole reason why we have the pledge, folks. This is it right here, right there. She says, what if something inappropriate comes up in what are we supposed to do? Just stop? Yes, that's exactly what you're supposed to do. That's exactly what you're supposed to do. All right. Normally I would say let's just forget what else she says after this, but it's important for you folks to watch the rest of this. Let's watch the rest of it.
Are well beyond the age that we probably all were in that time frame, and I think that we are getting so far into the weeds. But if there is a discussion in class, I don't see why a teacher and with his or her students could have a discussion, a light discussion maybe, but about what is going on in the world, because this is something that is real, and that we're going to shelter them from what's real that they have to deal with out in society. So I don't understand why we are putting all of these I don't know, handcuffs on our teachers that need to talk to their students and understand where their students are coming from. So for those reasons, I just cannot support this bill.
That should be a campaign killer for her. She doesn't understand.
Yeah, I think whoever her opponent is, if it's a Colton Bennett again, I think that person's campaign ads just got written.
I mean, it really has. I mean, that is the whole point. She says, because remember what the bill is about. This is the thing that they do. She changes taxes. What if we're talking about history? What if we're talking about this? What if we get off into talking about like science and biology, and it's not really, and we're like, oh, we should have we're talking literally about sexual orientation and gender identity, gender dysphoria, things that are a huge problem right now. And so if you're going to have a light discussion on sexual orientation, is that
the actual text of the bill? It's only one sentence. A public school shall be required to adopt procedures and policies that prohibit classroom instruction by public school personnel on sexual orientation or gender identity from kindergarten through grade 12, or in a manner that's not age appropriate or developmentally appropriate for students in accordance with state standards. So this isn't going to do anything to stop, sex education or teaching about things that are already in, the state standards for what curricula should be. It's essentially just saying, like I was saying, you're not going to use a math, segment to segue off into talking about your own strange views on sexual orientation and gender identity.
Yes, and people, and she says that this stuff doesn't happen. Folks, I have text messages. I have text messages from parents who took from their students who took a screenshot of their of a lesson plan that they had to do in school. They couldn't take it home. They did it in school on the school computer. It was like a reading comprehension plan. You're supposed to read a biography of this actress and then answer questions about what they read in that biography. And it turns out that this actress was a bisexual. So at some point in the questions, it says, what sexual orientation are they? And the correct answer was bisexual. And you couldn't advance throughout into the next slide without saying what the answer was. Well, this student didn't know what bisexual meant. So when they came home, they said, hey, Mom, hey, Dad, what's bisexual mean? Right?
What grade was this?
It was...
Sorry.
I don't know. You got me. I don't know. It might have been 8th grade. It might. I almost said 5th grade, but I don't think it was 5th grade. But that being said, it was young, right? And 8th grade, that's 13 years old, right? Isn't that 8th grade? Yeah, 13, something 14, somewhere around there. Anyway, Okay, so thankfully both of these bills passed and in the House.
Overwhelmingly, too.
Overwhelmingly too, except for McCann and some of the Democrats, if not all of them. So it'll head to the Senate. We'll pay attention and watch that. But Brian, I'm telling you, man, I'm just like, you gotta pay attention, man. You gotta pay attention. You gotta watch this program. You gotta watch these clips when they get shared around social media. You gotta bookmark them. You gotta send them. And folks, if you're thinking about running for office, this is what you have to watch. You have to watch what they're saying. You have to peg them down. They, 5 years ago, they didn't have. We weren't. There wasn't that much of an ability to watch all this stuff. It's the way social media is, the way independent media is now, where we can grab these clips and we figured out the rhythm and to just send these out there. This is having an impact. And folks, you need to pay attention to some of these people. And a lot of them, they can't help but stand up and talk. Like if she would just sit down, I don't want to give her any advice, but if she would just sit, she can't, someone like her just can't. They have to stand up.
The crazy thing about Representative McCann's situation is that she did not win a majority of the vote in the primary last year. Unfortunately, two conservative challengers split the vote. Had there only been one, she surely would have lost, as did a lot of other people who were moderate, especially on school choice issues, as she opposed school choice last year. So you'd think she'd come in here thinking, okay, well, I'm out of step with my constituents. Maybe I should move to the right a little bit, but it seems like she's doubling down.
Yeah, there it is there. 41% is what she got in the vote. Yeah, it's unfortunate, man. Unfortunate.
That's a bold strategy. We'll see if it works out for her.
Yeah, it is. All right, folks, we have a fantastic video from In the Know, Idaho again. And so we're going to get to that here in just a minute. But what was that comment? Did you throw a comment up there? What was that comment? Let's read that. Who's commenting? Who is this? This is a
1966.
Yeah, this woke garbage should not be in any school, especially in Idaho schools. Teachers do not need to be pushing their sexual ideology and agenda upon, of course. I mean, yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. And Brian, I learned something that was going on. Like I said, I was in Philadelphia and I met a Pennsylvania state legislator who basically ran because he discovered that there was this program that was initiated in a school district in that his children go to, that has an app. Folks, be on the lookout. I've already researched to see if this thing has been instituted in Idaho. It currently is not, but there's an app called Kooth, Kooth, and basically what it is an app for students in K through 12. And older, but they've initiated in K through 12 schools in order for students who are feeling, they have a lot of pressure, they're under a lot of anxiety, and they want to talk to a counselor or somebody of that nature, that they can go on this app and talk to, here it is, and talk to whatever you're feeling. We're here to help. And it's all done under the radar from parents. Parents don't know that this is available to students in their schools. And of course, you dig in deep to this stuff, and there's all sorts of stuff about affirming your gender identity and all of these things. So this is a UK company, and they've got their hooks in the United States now. They're in Pennsylvania. They also are in California as well. And don't be surprised if you start hearing rumblings of some of this stuff that creep up during these mental health. It's always under the guise of a mental health program,
I remember when we were told not to talk to strangers, and now schools are facilitating children talking to strangers. That's very creepy.
Online, no less. Yeah. Anymore. We'll get more into this later. I know I kind of just dropped that on you, but thanks guys for pulling that website up. But this is what's out there. I mean, this is the things that we're trying to stop. Like, do we need to wait 4 years for this thing to already be embedded into our school system, or do we need to kill it now and just say it's not going to be in here? So, all right, Brian, we'll say goodbye to you. We'll roll into this In the Know Idaho video and get out of here. But where can people follow you? And what are you looking forward to this week?
Oh, goodness. It's got a busy week. The big Medicaid reform bill is in the Senate committee this afternoon. I'm going to try and catch that and break it down. So, GemStateChronicle.com, at GemStateBrian on Twitter.
Fantastic. All right, Brian, we'll see you back here tomorrow, brother. All right, everybody. Thank you for watching today. it was good to see some of those debates earlier today. It's I really do enjoy that. Here's what I'm going to say. I'm going to sign off, but we don't want you to go anywhere because the latest In the Know Idaho video is about to drop. We'll post it up later as well, but this one's a doozy. So we'll see you tomorrow. Thank you so much for watching. Check it out.
Man, I sure do love paying my taxes. If anyone happens to be listening, yep, taxes all the time, and I encourage my friends to pay their taxes too. Our government is awesome. 9/11 definitely wasn't an inside job. I mean, that would be crazy. And personally, I don't do crazy. Hey, I don't need to see the president's birth certificate, not my jurisdiction. And guess what? If they say something is safe and effective, it's safe and effective. Listen, I hang my Ukraine flag one nail at a time, just like everybody else. I think we need to send them all the money that they need. Keep printing it, keep it coming. I'm not one of those conspiracy theorists that you hear about. They can really get stuck on an idea, but me, you just tell me what to think, I'll go with it. Nope, you won't see me burying gold in the backyard. That's dishonest. I wouldn't do that to you guys. And I register all my guns. I stayed home during COVID, and I called in any of my neighbors who weren't, because it seems like the right thing to do. I love how they classify documents, how the FBI does that, how they just keep them locked away. No one needs to know. Why would I need to know? And I just can't believe all those MAGA extremists who tried to overthrow the Capitol. Crazy. That's totally the kind of thing they would do. There was nothing weird about that day. I was watching the news, and I totally believed it. Yep. I don't ask a lot of questions. So I watch the sky every day, right? And I've been noticing these anomalies. Did y'all know the identity of the shooter? Also, how was he allowed to get on the roof? So the Gadsden flag is obviously like a symbol of the revolution, and people who use it today are kind of calling back to that 1776 spirit of patriotism. So that's why I love to fly it outside of my home. How many votes did Joe Biden fraudulently cast in order to steal the 2020 election? You can ballpark it, I don't mind. How many plants were in the crowd on January 6th? How could the Secret Service have been allowed to mess up so badly? I noticed a kind of a crisscross pattern the other day. That's highly unusual. I have photo documentation. If you need it, you let me know. Well, Agent, if you're listening, and I know you are, send my regards to Kash Patel.
Bill, I think it puts a stake in the ground that says we have a sovereign right to protect what's ours.